Okay, agenda item 8, which seems a bit of deja vu because this Assembly agreed with the recommendation a little while ago, but the board actually kicked it out. It's now brought back before us regarding the bus lane on the M11. Which officer is going to speak to that, actually?
Yeah. Obviously we had a discussion about this, and this particular intervention can be seen perhaps as if you like, a module of that idea. The idea being that at junction 11 itself we are aware that there is quite a lot of queuing southbound, particularly in the morning peak. And the idea being that clearly with the significant changes that are occurring, particularly in the CBC in terms of additional new office development and the relocation of the hospital, that will only get worse. And therefore there was consideration that intervening in a short-term way, looking at southbound bus-only slip road, would encourage modal shift and better public transport provision into that junction. So what we have done is, as instructed by the board, we've commissioned a business case, an outline business case, into some initial options around how that could work in practice. And within your report you'll see that we have some diagrammatics of 4 different options that we looked at. And those options range from, if you like, an extension of the existing slip road using the existing traffic lights in a prioritised manner, to a more bypassing the existing traffic lights for buses and linking back in to the highway at the junction with parking right, to slightly more radical interventions which involve, if you like, cutting across the open land which sits immediately to the east of the junction, which is currently under, I believe, some planning consideration. So these options were assessed using, as you'll be aware now, the standard, what we call web table or transport assessment guidance. And the fundamental point of the assessment is to determine if there is a public interest case to look into some of these options any further. The outcome of the assessment was that as a standalone intervention, there didn't appear to be a strong case strategically to intervene, fundamentally because if we look at what the businesses want, which is they obviously want an intervention that's going to support better public transport access, modal shift, the evidence in terms of what this will actually achieve is that it won't do that. Primarily because, as we discussed before, this is really just a very small stretch of priority along a very long and congested corridor at this current time. Clearly that may change if in the future there are A428 busways or Western Orchard busways, but as a standalone intervention, what we estimated is that the average journey time savings in the peak for buses would be between around about 70 seconds to about 20 seconds, I believe. So relatively small savings when you consider the overall journey length, which I believe was modelled at about 44 minutes. We then have to build in the fact that the same people need to get back into the bus and go home in the evening, and we know as well that there are congestion issues going back, particularly on junction 13. So in terms of a public investment, the BCRs, the benefit cost ratios were low, and they also assumed that a bus would be provided to actually use it, because at the moment there is no bus that goes from the north down the M11 onto the junction 11. Now, there have been suggestions that a bus can be provided, and we believe that an offer was set out. That offer, obviously, as we understand it, was time limited, and there's no evidence within this particular intervention that over time the subsidy required would dilute. So in fact we were postulating a subsidy of around £400,000 per annum for 3 buses an hour in the peak. And that would really maintain at that level even 10 years hence, because of the fact that we believe that the modal shift to make the buses pay for themselves would likely to occur with this proposal. So in effect what we are suggesting is, because we recognise that there are issues on the junction, we recognise that there is change coming to the area, and strategically there does need to be an intervention. What we're suggesting is that it's more sensible to look at the junction in the context of the other paper, which is the Western Orbital, but to understand that the Western could be seen as a modular scheme. And we've had a discussion around Park and Ride in particular, and that the physical intervention may be better linked to some kind of Park and Ride intervention around about Junction 11, in order to ensure that whatever the public sector does decide to invest in, there is a long-term utility. Because I think our concern is that the more ambitious options around intervention, which we're talking about more the 72nd end of the scale, they will in any case be looking at 7 to 8 to 9 million pounds of public sector intervention cost. And clearly what we don't want is a white elephant if the buses are no longer using it in 5 years. So our suggestion is in this report that we will be better served to integrate any such proposal into something else to ensure that whatever happens, this slip road will have utility to public benefit moving forward. And we therefore suggest that in the recommendation that the next stage of this is to really integrate it into the Western Liverpool, but for us to come back to you in July with a more specific proposal around that junction in combination with Western Liverpool in terms of Park and Ride.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to spend too much on this. This has had a fair airing before. Obviously, we didn't have the business cases before. But Councillor Smith, you have indicated you want to speak.
Thank you. Just to say that I supported the officer recommendation last time that this not to be taken forward as a standalone project, and I support it again for the same reasons I made last time, which Ashley has reiterated, that there are no buses travelling on this route, and it is a vanity project, and I think it's a crying shame that the board have allowed us to waste officer time and money in developing it up to this stage. So I wholeheartedly support the recommendation that it be dropped until such time as a total project for the whole scheme can be brought up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Thank you. So I think a lot of the discussions on this have already been said in the context of the Western Orbital, but I have a few points. I've got a few corrections first. Paragraph 13, AstraZeneca have not relocated their headquarters to Cambridge from Chester. They've actually relocated their headquarters from London. I think it's an important point to pick up because our move is being characterised or caricatured as a move from the north to the south. Actually, it's a move from all over the UK to Cambridge and actually from the whole world. Very glad to be here, but it's not a northwest caricature that describes our move. I think on paragraphs 5 and 6, it's all got a bit, it's not quite accurate. It might help to explain again why our interest in this project. So we know that Packworth are moving in 2018, AstraZeneca are moving slightly earlier than that. So 2,000 are coming from Packworth, 2,000 are coming from AstraZeneca. We think about another 1,000 are coming into CBC. And as Councillor Cuffley points out, there's another 6,000 growth around the Salisbury area. I assume a reasonable amount up in that northwest corridor who will somehow want to get there as well. So there is significant demand. So Packworth surveyed their staff, and about 50% said they'd use a bus service if there was one. We cut that number right down because we wanted to be realistic, because there were about 400. There's also another 1,000 advocate staff up in that corridor as well. So there is plenty of people who could potentially use the bus. And perhaps to Dr. Wells's point from earlier, he doesn't use buses or park and ride because they've got a car parking space. Well, actually, the vast majority of Packworth and AstraZeneca staff won't have a car parking space. So they're either going to come down that corridor by bus, well, they can't because there aren't any buses, as Councillor Smith pointed out, or they're going to get in their car and come to some point, park it, and then get another form of transport. We're particularly interested in that junction because at Junction 11 there'll also be a lot of AstraZeneca staff, not particularly coming from the A4 to 8, but they're coming from the south and they're coming down the A10. So just the context in 5 and 6, it's got some of the messages right, but I think it really underestimates the size of the problem. And even in the document itself, it says that it's an expectation of a 90% increase in journeys coming our way. And that's without presumably the central Cambridge interventions, which will potentially add even more if that comes along. So I actually think there is demand. South Cambridgeshire District Council actually supported unanimously in support of the bus-only link road, is my understanding. So I'm a bit surprised that Councillor Smith easement in favour. There you go. I actually think it is a clear statement from the board that they want to listen to business. Be in no doubt businesses at CBC, when I say businesses I mean the hospitals, the charities and ourselves are very much concerned about how the staff are going to get to CBC. Having said that, we said we wanted a quick solution which was cost effective. So quick, it really needs to be there by 2018 because we believe we're not going to get the modal shift unless people can use it before we get there. It needs to be cheap. Well, I think the cheapest option we've now demonstrated to not reduce the journey times particularly. So I accept the report and the recommendations, but I don't accept that it's a white elephant, that there's no demand for buses. I think it still leaves us as an assembly and a board with the problem with that junction is going to have some serious issues from 2018. And I don't think it's unreasonable to spend some money looking at what we can do. Now, I appreciate there are other junctions and there are other areas. So there's northwest of Cambridge, there's West Cambridge. CBC is only one of the things we need to look at as an assembly. But this is likely to be our first test. If in 2018 the M11 is blocked north and southbound completely and all the way down to CBC, that does not reflect well on Cambridge and does not reflect well on the city deal. And I think it was quite a brave decision for the board to pursue the scheme despite the evidence to the contrary. So I'd like to thank the board for taking the scheme as far as it has. I agree with the recommendation that given the fact it's not going to reduce, we're not going to get the modal shift because it doesn't reduce the time enough, and it's not going to introduce the time scale to allow the modal shift. So as far as I'm concerned, the project has to move on. What I would like to see, and I think it's more, it actually appeared in the Western Orbital paper. I'm a little bit worried that the recommendation is let's kick it into the long grass with the Western Orbital. Actually, Councillor Spitt commented that if we don't do anything now, we just, you send it off forever if you like. I'd like to see some of the recommendation which adds it to potential improvements at Junction 11, so it continues to stay in our mind. Not necessarily as a bus link, but I think we do need to come back to this issue as suggested in June or July 2017 with what are we going to do with that parking ride. There's discussions about increasing the capacity. We could think quite novelly about that. You don't have to actually have to build to get increased capacity. You could, for example, encourage car share. So you could have car share places at a parking ride, which increases the capacity so that people on Packwood could at least car share down there and reduce the total volume of cars. So let's think a bit more, let's stay innovative. Let's not just reject things out of hand because they don't immediately fit, and figure out what we can do at that junction. And if possible, use it as a model for others. So if we can figure out how to increase the capacity of Trumpton Park and Ride without actually building more concrete, we may be able to apply that elsewhere. Thank you.
I think there's some very good points there and some very good numbers again, so thank you for that. It is going to come back to us July 17, so that's good, isn't it? Yeah.
It just doesn't, can we make sure that reflected in the recommendation? Now, notice, if you kick it into the Western Orbital scheme, it might not come back to 2022.
No, what I was going to say was I'll make sure the board know of our concerns, or your concerns in particular, about it being kicked into long grass or not. Leslie.
I think again this needs the traffic model with the future, so the numbers from John Wells and others are really important to get in here. Personal experience is that is a very congested junction already. We need to do something about it. The argument on not having buses and therefore people not using the buses is a circular one. We do need to get over that. We need to put some buses on, we need to try them out, and we need to make sure that people do use them. But I think my main concern with this is that we as a City Deal group are trying to communicate that we are serious about making buses available for people, making them practical for people. And if we do just put some of these smaller schemes into the very, very long grass, then we're missing a communication opportunity as well. So I'm very disappointed to see the outcome of this one. The evidence doesn't feel quite right to me. I absolutely agree that saving 20 seconds or 90 seconds on a journey is not important. It is the viability of the transition overall. But this one does feel like we're looking at it from the wrong point of view. Thank you.
Okay, noted, thank you. Councillor Dick.
Chair, I just wanted to put on the record that as I read the papers, the recommendation is not as it is on our papers because there are no buses on this route. That is not, I think, the rationale that compels me to support the recommendations. The reasons seem to compel me are that the improvement made would be very marginal, and secondly, independent of a solution for the larger orbital route. It probably is out of proportion with actually tackling it in the context of a whole. And those are the reasons, not lack of belief in the existence of a problem, or not out of a belief in the need that we need to support employers and their employees with improvements. I think one of the biggest accusations, most serious accusations, and sometimes wrong accusation, against what the City Deal is doing is that it's operating piecemeal. And I think that we're being pulled up by the officers on this occasion in this report, and being told to think about this in the whole, think about this in strategic terms, and not in piecemeal terms. And I think we should really support that.
No, I agree, but also, obviously, we all feel that something needs to be done. So,
Can I just say, actually, possible?
yeah.
So in terms of putting into the long grass, really, there's no. If you read the two reports together, I don't think we are at all suggesting that what we're saying is we come back in July as part of the Western Orders this time, through, if you like, assessments of what we think can be done. So I don't know, sometimes perhaps because there's a lot of words being printed, I don't know, perhaps the message doesn't get across. The officers are trying to do that in any way, but we are, as Councillor Dick said, trying to just make sure that the decision you've got before you is very much with this bigger picture in mind.
I think we're getting some sort of consensus. I've got two more speakers and then I'll draw a line. I've got Councillor Carpen and then Councillor Agent. Councillor Carpen.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive, but obviously looking at all this in a strategic manner. It was just looking at paragraph 35 and in the light of the comments made, to do with the subsidy of 500,000 a year, presumably. In the light of all the pressures that the county council is on at the moment, subsidies for buses, bus routes being taken away and some reduced and taken away, I was just thinking to myself, yes, initially there could be 106 monies available to subsidise the sets, but where is the subsidy going to come from in the long term? £500,000 is that's a huge sum. Fine.
Agreed and noted. Thank you. Councillor Agent.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to bring a slightly different flavour. I remember this coming up some time ago, the first time, when this Assembly supported overturning the officer's suggestion and going ahead and recommending that we went ahead with this road. We went ahead with it on two or three reasons, mostly about it was a small project and it would test the way that this City Deal operated. Secondly, we were very concerned about the amount of increase of traffic to get to the park and ride, and we voted in favour of this. Then the executive supported that. Then the officers came back and gave another set of reasons as to why we shouldn't support it. And the majority of this Assembly, and I wasn't one of those, supported the officers. Then it went to the executive, and the executive overturned that decision, and now we come back with another decision by officers, or another recommendation by officers, as to why we should overturn what to me still remains as being a very important opportunity to test the City Deal, and to bring into being something that may effectively stop an enormous problem occurring on the M11 when the new sites on the Cambridge campus, the hospital campus, open up. And I still think that we should be considering this. I believe that it's something that we should be following through. And if there are the amount of people that want to use those buses, then it will pay for itself. And we do need that road to come in. The existing road is ridiculously small and congested, and will feed back onto all the surrounding area. Bringing in another 2,000 or 3,000 people is going to be hugely problematic, and we will look really silly if we reject it yet again.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fraser. I don't think anyone's rejecting it. I think everyone's just taking a little pause so to make sure we get it right. I think we all acknowledge something needs to be done there. But your point has been noted. Thank you. Assembly, we have a recommendation in front of us as per page 79 of our agenda pack that basically the M11, Junction 11 Southbound bus only opposite road concept should be integrated in the Western Orchard project. I haven't heard anyone apart from maybe Councillor Bajan, but I think we might go along with us because we're not getting into non-boss, we're just making sure we're doing the right thing. Is anyone really against that recommendation? Okay, well your concerns are noted and I'll certainly take them to the board, especially that something needs to be done at a time scale. So thank you for that.
No, the road could be used for traffic, lots of buses in the area.
Okay, agenda item 9, tranche 2 prioritisation. Who's taking that one? Welcome, Mike. Anyway.
Right, afternoon everybody. Just a few words by way of preamble. A prioritisation exercise was undertaken in 2014 and that gave rise to the priorities that are currently being developed and delivered during the tranche 1 period 2020. And the paper before you today gives an update on proposals for tranche 2 prioritisation. This includes a number of recommendations on taking the work forward over the coming year, as set out on pages 99 and 100 of the report. In summary, it asks that approval be given to a number of things. I'll just rattle through those quickly. There are a number of headline objectives for the prioritisation exercise. It asks that recognition be given between this work and a range of other work streams that are ongoing, including that related to the local plans and the combined authority. It recommends that we build upon the approach that was taken during tranche 1. We note that commitments were made by tranche 1 to consider particular schemes in tranche 2, and it suggests that a report is received by this body and the board in June next year, recommending a final prioritisation methodology and an approach to the long listing. So this is the putting schemes into the pot for sifting and finally prioritising. A couple of other things mentioned in the report. One is it recommends or asks whether there's an appetite to explore the creation of 2 further approaches to transport funding. One is around creation of a potential rolling fund, the idea here being one of investing in transport that might unlock growth where there's a potential to recoup revenues from that growth downstream. And the second proposal is around potentially top slicing some of the tranche 2 monies for a smaller scale fund, for small scale measures that unlock growth. So rather than necessarily being very large scale measures, more localised ones that tackle localised blockages to growth. And finally, it asks for the Assembly and the Board to endorse the timetable in Table 1 at the end of the report for delivering on tranche 2 priorities. That's probably all I need to say, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. From the Chair, I just obviously would like to make people aware, or more aware, I'm sure you are anyway, that there's certain references to this tranche 2 prioritisation, there's certain references to local plans, which actually the City and South Cam still haven't got their local plans through. And also, now obviously we have the combined authority going ahead. Permission for that was granted by all the councils in the last couple of weeks. So it is a moving landscape out there. I'd just like to draw Assembly's attention to one of the options, which is page 104 in our agenda pack. And at the bottom, 20B, tranche 2 investments could be prioritised later, etc., etc. And I just want to make Assembly members aware that for me personally, I think it may be the wrong time with everything that's going on at the moment. We can just defer this slightly, which would make sense to me, but I'm going to open it up. So anyone that wishes to speak on this, please do so. Councillor Cameron.
Just an observation.
This fund for smaller scale measures. I was just thinking, in the light of what things cost these days, whether 500,000, you can't get much done with that, whether that fund should be really $1 million. I'm not saying we should be going looking for spending money needlessly, but it seems to be quite a small amount when you look at the estimates of what even a cycleway costs and so on. Or are we just talking, we're not just talking about sets of traffic lights here, are we? We're talking about strategic.
Well, certainly, I mean, County Council has just increased the local highways investment scheme pot from just over 400 to 600 because of the popularity of these smaller schemes. But when you're actually sitting on these panels deciding who gets what money, you realise just how expensive even a zebra crossing is these days. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's more the concept of having a smaller pot or fund that people can actually dip into and apply for. I don't think it's a bad idea, but maybe the actual level of it may need to be reconsidered. Have officers got a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the value could be revisited, and the proposition was, in terms of the timescale, that we would come back to this assembly towards the middle of next year with some refined proposals, and that could include reviewing that ceiling on costs.
Fair enough.
It's also worth thinking about match funding in terms of levels. So if we were providing $500,000, that might be matched by some community infrastructure levy from a parish council, by private sector investment, or by arranging other sources.
Certainly we'd like to think so. I'm not sure the reality of that is quite there. But anyway, moving on, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just following on from what Councillor Kavanagh said, I have my reservations about this. I'm not sure this is what the city deal's about, quite honestly. We already have the local highways infrastructure scheme for people to bid into. I'm not sure how we would manage essentially being grant givers for this. I think, the fact that the projects we've already identified actually involve way more money than we have. If we start giving it away to other things, I think we actually potentially leave ourselves short for the priorities that we've already identified. So I'm not happy about this. I don't think it's what the city deal should be doing.
Okay, fair enough. As I say, maybe we should be revisiting this anyway. Claire Buskin.
Slightly different point of view. One of the reasons we don't get as much sponsorship from central government as we might do in this region is that we all have very loud voices about different priorities. So whenever anybody asks what we would like in this region, we say something different. So I would encourage the discussion rather than the completion of a list. But I think we all ought to understand what people are asking for, despite things being in a very chaotic state at the moment.
Great comment, thank you. Andy Williams.
So Claire's just stolen my thunder. I think a similar theme I see in the recommendations, what I didn't see was things that were outlined in paragraphs 8 and 14, which is essentially other schemes coming in from outside, like the Oxford to Cambridge link and such like. I think I would rather not delay the discussion. I think in some ways the discussion is more important than the outcome. But looking at how we're going to think about leveraging assets like the Oxford to Cambridge connection for the city deal, how we look at everything strategically. In addition to that, in terms of coming up with common key messages, I think it will help us in our engagement and communication with the wider general public on what we are all about. So to start to give a feel about what our overall strategy is in some ways more important than what the individual schemes are. So I'd rather not delay it, because I think we need to start going through that process to get ourselves aligned for interaction with central government and also better alignment with the general public on what we want to do.
Okay, so can I just have clarity that you'd rather push things ahead now before local plans and the combined authority, or are you willing maybe to wait a few months just to get that money out?
I'd rather we started the work and deal with the strategic ambiguity and reflecting that strategic ambiguity exists, but not use it as an excuse not to start to have those discussions, because those discussions would help us get aligned.
Okay. Dr. Wells.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to reiterate a point I made earlier, but in this context, which is my plea would be that actually, although the output is a prioritised list of investment opportunities, actually what we need to really talk about is a holistic transport plan which leads to investment requirements. I mean, it does strike me not to revisit it, but we had 2 agenda items. In the first one, on the Western Orbital Road, it was about building an off-road solution for our bus transport in one part of the town, and in the next agenda item, we said, actually, there's no economic case to have a bus service in exactly the same part of town. It does seem to me a little disconnected, as it is about the system. If we can't afford to run bus services, there will be no point in building assets to make them flow more easily, and it has to join up.
I agree entirely. Integration, not only what we're doing, but what everyone else is doing as well. Councillor Dick.
I'd like to agree with what Andy just said. I think it's important that we start getting to discuss these the issues and incongruities between our approach and other people's approach, other organisations' ideas as soon as we can. I'm broadly okay with the recommendation, but I confess to being a bit sceptical about the grants-based approach. I think it's always the case that this sort of approach to things results in an uneven bidding process, and not always representative of the actual underlying need. And I just worry that it's going to be it's like slipping money out for non-strategic things, which could be spent on strategic things. And it would be nice to think they were all the same, but I'm just not entirely comfortable with that. But I do, on the other hand, think that it would be beneficial to look at this use of part of our funding as a revolving fund. I've seen this operate quite well undertaken by the LEP, and so long as it was manageable within our cash flow in a way which didn't limit us from pursuing our other projects, then I think it would be a very useful use of money, which may be otherwise waiting for one of our schemes to be spent. And a revolving fund can also have the effect of sort of perpetuating the income of the city deal, so that it elongates the period over which we have to spend. Because my understanding of a revolving fund is that we would get back all the money that we put in to provide bridge financing for schemes, and so we wouldn't be losing financially for it, but we would be assisting support projects that probably would be paid for in the end through Section 106 contributions, which are all of a piece really with what we're trying to do in terms of the local economy. So I think that is really a well worth looking at point. I think we had there was a scheme in this area. I think it was the Relief Road, the Outbrooks Relief Road, which was part funded by revolving fund contribution from the LEP, and it's an example of where money wasn't there through Section 106 at the time it was needed, and it became available from the LEP, and the LEP gets its money back, I think, and then moves it on to something else, investing it or even further revolving the money around.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm getting is support for the recommendations as are, apart from some concerns over I'll say the second paragraph of it, creating a fund for the small scale measures. There's some concern over whether that's appropriate. And also, if you have a look at the recommendations, B, it does recognise the dependencies with the local plan and the new combined authority as well there, so it does incorporate everything. So I'm not getting anyone against these recommendations. So Michael, is this...
Could we just add quickly to the little A at the bottom of it, to ensure balance of priorities between communities, districts and users? That at least would ensure that you're looking at some of the problems on Cambridge East, which never gets a mention in this meeting.
I shall make sure I put that to the board. Okay. So, is everyone okay with these recommendations? Is anyone against it at all? Okay, and as I say, I'll I'll share our concerns about the small plants, what it's called, small scale measures plan. Okay, thank you. Right, agenda item 10, Department for Transport consultation on web tag. Who's that? Tanya.
So this paper is just seeking agreement that we should respond to the consultation the Department for Transport is currently running on changes to the web tag methodology. Web tag is strategically important to the Greater Cambridge City deal because the assurance framework we agreed with the Department for Transport requires us to use it, and one of the slight niggles we're finding with it is that it requires very conservative assumptions on housing growth, while actually the City deal is about accelerating the delivery of a very ambitious housing growth agenda in Greater Cambridge. I think that we welcome the technical changes that DFT is proposing, but we want them to go further. There aren't actually any delegations for the City deal to respond to consultations. We'd be responding along the same lines as the County Council, but with a bit of a City deal slant. So this is seeking agreement to the outline and delegation so that I can turn the bullet points into paragraphs and submit it.
Okay, thank you. In the recommendations to 1, it says agree to submit a combined city deal. I don't think we've got quite to the stage of a combined city deal yet, so I'm going to ask that we take the combined out, or by the time it gets to the board, maybe the recommendation and the combined can be taken out. But apart from that, I've got no one that wishes to speak on this. It seems pretty self-explanatory. Is everyone okay with the recommendations? Yeah, I'm seeing nods, so thank you very much. Agenda item 11, the City Deal financial monitoring. Hi, welcome. Yes, come and sit here. When you're ready, thank you.
I was just going to present the paper, there's very quickly. There's no change since last presentation of this report, and so I just want to present it as it is. If there's any questions?
Any questions at all on this? Wow, okay. Noted, thank you very much. Worth the wait. Agenda item 12, City Deal forward plan.
This updates the board plan to cover the whole of the calendar year for 2017. As you probably know, it's a statutory requirement that local government bodies publish a board agenda plan. Main additions to draw your attention to are the Milton and Histon road schemes, which I briefly mentioned in the progress report and now been tabled for March, feedback on the workshops. And the first determination of a traffic regulation order will be scheduled for March as well for some of the Cross City cycling improvement schemes.
Councillor.
I noticed that there is no mention of a paper on the implications of the combined authority, and I wondered if it was intended to bring to the Assembly and the Board an update on the position on that, and whether the effects that has on the way that we will need to operate.
I think it's a very good question. I'm not sure about the timing of that, Tanya.
I think that it's something we could bring back, and we'll just look at timing in terms of the set-up of the combined authority. It's going to be established, as I understand it, in February, and then the mayoral elections will be May, and so we could bring something and put it, table it on the agenda.
Leave that with me, Councillor. I think it's a good point you raised there, so I'll liaise with Tanya about best way bringing that forward. Thank you. Any other questions on the floor plan? Well, in that case, after 1 hour and 57 minutes, meeting closed. Thank you.